Welcome back to another episode of the CS Podcast presented by the NUC NFL Draft Bible. As always, I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, and we're going to start doing a few shows up until the NFL Draft, focusing on how teams are doing and what they're doing in free agency. As you all know, teams were able to sign free agents as of March 9th, so we're a few days into the craziness of the NFL offseason. As they say, there is no offseason in the NFL, and it's always right to kick this little series off with a good friend of the show. If you guys are familiar with the CS Podcast and some of our work that we do at the NUC NFL Draft Bible, you guys are familiar or should be familiar with Aaron Leming. He does great work over at bearreport.com. You guys could give him a follow on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. And Aaron joins the show now to talk a little bit about what the Chicago Bears have done in free agency. And they seem to be one of the teams that for a second straight year, Aaron, Ryan Pace has knocked it out of the park, at least here. 4 days into free agency. Obviously, the big signing is Danny Trevathan, the linebacker formerly of the Denver Broncos. Aaron, how's everything going, and what are your thoughts on what the Chicago Bears have done so far?
Well, they've done a great job. Ryan Pace has really done a very smart job. Free agency is known for being an overpay. That's really just the way it is. Good teams build through the draft and use free agency as a way to kind of fill, certain holes that they can't fill through the draft or maybe immediate needs. So, it's been very impressive what they've done so far. Especially with Danny Trevathan, he was projected to be an $8-9 million a year guy. They got him for $6. Then you look at the move that they made today for Darrell Freeman. That move in its own was incredible. 3 years, $12 million for a guy that was rated as one of the top inside linebackers last year. Obviously they've made some other moves. They made some other re-signs. Now Massey's deal doesn't look quite as good. Neither does Tracy Porter's, although it's definitely a little bit better than was expected before. But it's also worth noting that the corner market has been absolutely terrifying the last 2 years. You saw what Byron Maxwell got last year. You saw what Jenkins got this year. Unreal for a guy that's, I don't even think he's in the top two tiers of a corner. Overall, I think Pace has played it really smart. They have Akiem Hicks in there right now. Obviously, he's going to be he's supposedly still in Chicago right now, so it should be interesting to see what happens there. I do think they will get a deal done with him. I think it's a little bit touch and go at the moment, just trying to get everything, knocked down, and he is one of the last good defensive linemen on the market. But overall, I think Pace has been really smart. He's done a really good job of filling holes. Obviously, there's a lot of holes, especially on the defensive side. This defense on paper is already looking a lot better.
Yeah, and like you said, all these deals look pretty reasonable, especially for the new guys coming in. Last time we chatted, we thought that there was a possibility that the Bears would be able to sign Malik Jackson, and we all saw what he got over there in Jacksonville. That guy certainly got paid for his big year for a Super Bowl winning team. And Jacksonville seems to have a nice-looking squad over there. But as we know, you don't always win in free agency. Bears fans at least know that very well, especially over the last few years. But it looks as if Ryan Pace is playing this all out very well. And let's sound the inside linebackers there. And Danny Trevathan, a 4-year deal. And then today news comes out that they signed the former Colts linebacker Darrell Freeman to a 3-year deal. How much of an upgrade are we talking about already just at the inside linebackers positions alone with Trevathan and Freeman compared to last year's Shea McClellan and Christian Jones?
Well, just to give you an idea, Matt Miller from Bleacher Report went ahead and released something, I think it was a few days ago, maybe last week, and he released rankings, and one of them was inside linebacker rankings, and he had Darrell Freeman as his number 2 and Danny Trevathan as his number 3. That just kind of gives you an idea right there. The way that they've been able to upgrade, especially at the position, has been incredible. Especially when you look at what they did last year. Obviously Christian Jones was an issue, and obviously Shea McClellan, pre-injury I thought he played pretty well. He came back out of the injury, didn't play too well. It looks like he's not going to be back. Obviously wouldn't be in a starting role even if he was, but obviously you had John Timu and Jonathan Anderson that were also there, but I mean overall it was a very weak spot, probably the worst position on the field for them. So to be able to go from worst position in the field to all of a sudden you look at it and they may have one of the better linebacker pairings in the league now. And that's something that Vic Fangio did really well with in San Francisco. So I definitely think it's good, and to kind of touch back on Malik Jackson he signed an incredibly big deal. The Bears were in on him to a certain extent. Obviously, it got a little out of control. He ended up getting $14.25 million a year over, an average annual value. And for that, that's incredible. And a lot of people were upset that the Bears didn't do that. But, just to put things into perspective, they were able to get Danny Trevathan. They were able to get Freeman. They were able to get Porter re-signed, all for an average annual value of just over 14. So just right under what Malik Jackson is getting per year. Ryan Pace was able to bring in 3 starters, 3, in my opinion, 2 very above average and 1 average to above average starter. That's what Ryan Pace is trying to do. He's trying to find value in free agency, and it's not an easy task. And quite frankly, I think he's done, quite a great job so far.
I would absolutely agree. Obviously Trevathan, Freeman. That's going to be, as you said, probably one of the top inside linebacker duos in the NFL. It's funny how quickly, one of the teams. One of the team's weak spots turns into a strength, and that's exactly what looks like just happened over the last 4 days here with the Chicago Bears and their inside linebackers. And on the first day of free agency, another player that was signed by the Bears, Bobby Massey, right tackle from the Arizona Cardinals, formerly, I believe he was a former first-round pick out of Ole Miss. And now this pretty much seals the deal that Kyle Long will be playing right guard next season or this coming season. Is that what it sounds like, Aaron?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it was reported shortly after that, but I think it was Jason Cole Bleacher Report that was what the plan was. And Long is he's confirmed that a few times, and he seems to be happy with it. So ultimately, I'm not a big Massey fan. I've been very open about that since the beginning. I think. Overall, against the run, I think he's above average, but against a solid pass rush, he's going to struggle. The one thing to know about him, though, is the fact that he gets better as the season goes along. He's known for slow starts, and he picks it up. Plus, he's been on a winning team. The Cardinals have been a good team the last few years, and he's been a part of that. So, overall, I think your big pull is the fact that I think, he could be about as good as Kyle Long at right tackle. But you're moving Kyle Long from right tackle where he's somewhat average back to right guard where, he's an all-pro. He may be one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league. So, that's huge on multiple fronts. It definitely improves the line. He'll get to work a little bit closer with Theranos Grassu at center. So overall, their interior line, especially at the guard position, is going to be incredible. Matt Slauson's obviously very good as well. So I think really it's going to help out the run game, which is something that we saw last year that was very big for them. They really wanted to focus on that, and they maintained a good balance throughout the whole entire year, and especially with Matt Forte out of the picture now. They're definitely going to need to have a consistent run game, and they're going to need to have good blocking. I do believe that Kadeem Carey and I think obviously Jeremy Langford are going to be in the mix, and I think they're going to be a good tandem. But I also don't think the Bears are done on that front either. But it's definitely going to be good to have a more solid offensive line. And a lot of people weren't very happy with Charles Leno over there at left tackle, but the team's very impressed with him. The team likes him. The team feels safe with him. So not to say that they won't upgrade if they can find it in the draft, but right now, if I had to guess, unless they're able to find a good talent within the first few rounds of the draft, I do think he will be starting at left tackle. I do think he's got, obviously more development, but I think the whole entire team's comfortable with him, and I think he's a good pass blocker. Definitely needs some work in the run game, but I think meshing this whole entire line together another year, getting everybody back to their strong points is going to be a big one.
Absolutely, and obviously health is probably the biggest key for the offensive line. Over the last couple of years, the Bears have obviously struggled in that part, but we'll see if they could pull together another healthy year on the offensive line like they did a few years ago. I believe Bushrad's first year or whatnot. But anyways, yeah, I also wasn't too crazy about the Bobby Massey signing, but I will say this. And I pretty much always felt this way about Kyle Long when he first moved to tackle. I just wasn't a fan, and I'm sure most people that keep an eye out on the Bears, they weren't a fan of how it all went down, how he moved to tackle, a week or so before the first game of the regular season, having to prepare for Julius Peppers. At least now he goes back to a position where he's already solidified himself as one of the top in the NFL at guard, and obviously, he goes into the off-season programs and everything like that, training camp, knowing what position he'll be playing. And I got to say, having Long and Massey, I got to think will be at least a little better than Dukas and Long there on the right side of the offensive line. So I think this will be better for the team. Obviously, John Fox, Ryan Pace, they feel the same. Again, Bobby Massey was also signed on the first day of free agency by the Chicago Bears, 3-year deal worth $18 million, $6.5 million guaranteed. We got Aaron Leming of BearReport.com here on the CS podcast presented by the NUC NFL Draft Bible. I'm Chris Shanafelt. You guys can give Aaron a follow on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. And Aaron, you already touched on it a little bit. Akiem Hicks, defensive lineman. I mean, Ryan Pace is obviously very familiar with him from his time in New Orleans. I believe he met with the Bears last night. It carried on to today. I mean, can you give us any update on Akiem Hicks? Akiem Hicks. I always want to say Hakeem Nicks as the wide receiver, but Akiem Hicks. Any update on him? And if he doesn't get signed, I mean, should Bears fans be upset? I mean, it's almost it's almost funny to me. I mean, I know that this is a pretty decent player, but this isn't one of those guys that'll have a huge impact on the defense, will he?
Well, it's funny. I was actually talking to somebody about this today. I feel like Hicks is a similar situation to what Mason Foster was last year. I think Mason Foster was a better player than what the Bears treated him as. I thought he was at least an average starter. But at the same time, I mean, I feel like a lot of people before the free agency period really didn't know who Hicks was. Personally, I am a fan of him. I was a bigger fan of Jay Howard. I thought he would have fit the Bears a little bit better in what they're looking for. But at the same time, I mean, Pace knows what he has in Hicks, and he's really the last big name on the market right now. I mean, Nick Fairley's out there, but the guy's a little inconsistent. I don't know if he's a 3-down player. With Hicks, I mean, you're getting a 3-down player. He may not have quite as big of a pass rushing upside as some people may want, but at the same time, I mean, he's a guy that can pull down 5-6 sacks a year. But he's going to be really good against the run, and he's very versatile. So, I mean, overall, yeah, it should be a big signing for the Bears, and I'm sure it is a big priority because they've targeted this from day one. As far as an update goes, I mean, he was in Chicago last night. They met again today. From what I was told, he was supposed to have a physical today. Just as if he did end up wanting to sign a deal. The last thing I heard, and this is just kind of rumors floating around, was the fact that he was going to stay in Chicago tonight. He hadn't made a decision on what he was going to do. He was supposed to meet with Detroit later on the night. I don't think that's going to happen. And that's really the other team that's going to be fighting for his services right now. So, I mean, ultimately, I think the Bears are still in the driver's seat. I do think, if I had to put something on it, I do think they'll get him. I really think it comes down to the fact that they're trying to settle on money and probably years right now. As we've seen with what Ryan Pace has done so far, I mean, he's going for value. And although Hicks would be very good for the Bears, he'd be a massive upgrade over Jarvis Jenkins, in my opinion. It would fill a need, but at the same time, at what cost? I mean, how can you justify, paying Trevathan what you paid him and paying Freeman what you paid him, and with these great deals, and come out and overspend for a guy like Hicks, who is not going to have the same type of impact. It's not to say that he's not a good player, because he is, and he's a guy that still has a high ceiling. He's 26 years old. So I do think they can get him on a 2-3 year type deal, maybe a 4, and that's probably what he's fighting for right now. But like I said, I think it'll get done. I think it is a key part of the offseason, I really do. Because basically what it does is it sets them up to be in a position to where they can go best player available. And I know that sounds like a trendy thing, and outside of obviously probably inside linebackers, probably not going to be a position that they target maybe later on in the draft. But, going in early, you know, you want to be able to have your options open. And unfortunately, I think if they do miss out on Hicks, there's really no other impact guys. Obviously, Jarvis Jenkins supposedly signing with the Jets. I don't know what's been going on with that. There's been multiple fake reports coming out of New York lately. But the Bears don't really seem too interested in re-signing him. So that definitely does play a factor because they don't really have any starting quality five techs right now, and they need two of them. And it would be a lot of pressure for the Bears to have to step into the draft and hope to find two starting guys. I mean, obviously you're looking for value, and I know a lot of fans and a lot of people don't expect the Bears to compete this year, but the expectation is that they will. So, I mean, Ryan Pace is trying to build a team that can obviously win right now, but has to sustain success over the years, which is the kind of deals he's been doing, you know, with the younger guys. But you know, it would be a big hole to try to dig themselves out of, even with as good as they've done so far, to not have to go and look for two starting caliber defensive ends. I mean, they really need to find one in free agency or in a trade. I don't know if that'll happen or not. Jared Crick's another guy that could be an option for them. But Hicks is definitely a top name out on the market, so we'll just have to see what happens. I do think he does end up with the Bears. I think it is a pretty big signing for them, even if he doesn't quite have the impact that, you know, obviously Muhammad Wilkerson or somebody like that would have, but at the same time, he would also come a lot cheaper, and overall, he's still got, you know, a somewhat high ceiling, and he can still improve. So I think that's where the Bears are at there. I do think they'll end up getting the deal done, but everything's somewhat up in the air right now. So we'll just have to see what happens.
It's safe to say that he will come cheaper than Malik Jackson, so that's certainly good to hear. And all right, so it would at least be an upgrade from Jarvis Jenkins, who early on in the season looks pretty good at times, but towards the end of the season he kind of disappeared, and we realized that he was really just a rotational player, if that. And of course, he's heading to New York to play for the Jets. I mean, they got the Chicago Bears 2.0 over there with, of course, Matt Forte signing with the Jets. Brandon Marshall last year traded over there. And we'll see what goes on for the rest of free agency, the rest of the off season. Another name that I don't know if there's really any rumors around this linebacker, especially now Darrell Freeman signing with the Chicago Bears today, Aaron. But I believe that it is out there that James Laurinaitis is at least scheduled to visit with the Chicago Bears. Does this Darrell Freeman deal kind of just X that one out right there?
I definitely think it does. And also, come to find out, it turns out apparently that account was not his dad's account after all. Apparently it was a fake account. So apparently none of that ended up being real. There was quite a few people, including myself, that did fall for that. Apparently he's already had quite a few visits, but I guess the Bears are not on his list, obviously, after this. So that definitely does take care of that. I do think Freeman's a big upgrade over what Laurinaitis would have to offer at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I believe Freeman is 29, 30 years old, but he's only played 4 years in the league. I mean, this is a guy that has some CFL experience, I believe even some AFL experience. I could be wrong on that, but so when you see, 29, 30 years old for Darrell Freeman, it may sound funny, but I think he's a younger 29, 30-year-old, especially, looking at James Laurinaitis. I mean, that guy has played in just about every snap of his NFL career. I believe it was over 99%. I mean, 99.7% of the snaps that Laurinaitis he's played in this season for the St. Louis Rams, now the Los Angeles Rams. But again, he's Aaron Leming at Aaron Leming NFL on Twitter. Check out his work, bearreport.com. And Aaron, we'll let you go in just a few minutes, but some of the signings that took place today: Mitch Unrein, 2-year deal to come back with the Chicago Bears, and Mark Mariani, a 1-year deal. Mariani, obviously, not the greatest year for him on special teams, but about midway through the season, he really turned out to be a pretty reliable wide receiver, especially when this wide receiver core was really taking some hits and had that injury bug. I mean, what exactly? I guess it's too early to say what should we expect from Mariani next season. I mean, we haven't even seen what they've done in the draft just yet. But what does this Mariani deal say to you? I mean, he's back on a 1-year deal. I believe he had a few other teams interested in him. But I mean, is this a guy that we should just expect to see back on his special teams role, or I don't think Deontay Thompson is going to be back next season. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I mean, Mark Mariani, 1-year deal. When you seen that, what was your reaction?
You know, I think it was somewhat expected. I mean, he is a guy that is reliable in terms of, slot receiver. I think 19 of his 22 catches were first down. So, I mean, that's definitely big. So, I mean, overall, I think he's miscast as a kick returner. I think as a punt returner, he still wasn't too bad. I think he's somewhat reliable. He obviously had that bad game where he fumbled the ball, I think it was 2 or 3 times. But outside of that, I mean, really, he has been pretty reliable in terms of being a punt returner and being a receiver. So I think it's more than anything, I think it's a little insurance. Obviously, Eddie Royal is going to be back this year. His whole entire deal for this year is guaranteed. And then obviously you're going to have Alshon Jeffrey that's going to be back at least on the tag. I do expect that they find a way to get some deal done with him sooner rather than later. You know, the return of Kevin White, or more the point, the start of Kevin White. And then, Marquise Wilson. And, I mean, they have multiple options. So it really depends on what they do, especially in the draft. I think they'll look for a receiver. I don't think it'll be early, but I definitely think within probably the first 4 or 5 rounds of the draft, they'll find some sort of speed guy with some upside that can stretch the field. So it definitely should be interesting. I look at Mariani more as like a Wes Welker type guy. He's not quick, but he's a solid slot guy. He's a guy that's going to get you some catches. He didn't have one drop last year. So, I mean, that's definitely big. But at the same time, I don't think he's a guaranteed for a roster spot yet. I think there's too much going on to really say that at this point. I do think they should bring Deontay Thompson back, and I'm right there with you. I don't really understand what's going on there, but, I mean, he really had some upside as a kick returner. I don't know if maybe he, didn't perform as well as a receiver as they'd once hoped, or what the deal was, but I definitely think at some point, even though they didn't tender him, maybe they'll try to bring it back. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but I think it would be smart. And they may have plans, like I said, to draft somebody who has that type of experience. Sterling Shepard's a guy that I absolutely love, but I think he may be a little high for the Bears' taste. Probably a second rounder, maybe slip into the first. But there's definitely going to be some options. Pharaoh Cooper is going to be out there. In the drive, there's multiple options that they can go for. So it's a little too early to tell yet. I do think it's a smart signing. It's a little bit of a, it's a smart option to have there just in case, a good fallback option. But I don't think by any means that this means that he will be guaranteed a roster spot. But we'll just have to see what happens. There's still obviously a lot of free agency left.
Right, and Mariani, he's a guy that probably every year of his career, his roster spot was never guaranteed. Had to earn it in minicamp and or training camp. And this past year in training camp last summer, I memean, he had a pretty strong training camp from what I remember. So we'll have to see him put up that type of performance or better this year. You mentioned Sterling Shepard, the Oklahoma wide receiver. I would absolutely love for him to somehow, some way fall to the third, I wouldn't even say 4th round. I think that's just impossible right there. But if he's there in the 3rd round, I wouldn't mind at all if the Chicago Bears took him. I mean, him playing, in the slot there with, of course, Alshon, Kevin White, and then, learn from a guy like Eddie Royal. I mean, that would be pretty sweet right there. So Mark Mariani probably going to have more of an impact on special teams this coming year. Than on the offense like he did this past season. And sticking with special teams, Aaron, a couple days ago, Sherrick McManus, a 2-year deal. Obviously, he's had his opportunity to shine on defense, didn't make the most of it, has proven to be a struggling corner nickelback there on the defense, but one of this, or arguably the team's best special teams player. How big was it for the Bears and bring back Sherrick McManus, who's also gaining some interest from a couple of other teams? Believe he had a visit with the Patriots scheduled, or I believe the Patriots were showing some type of interest, but he decided to come back to the Chicago Bears on a 2-year deal. How big was that for the team to bring back arguably their best special teamer?
I think it was big. I mean, the Bears really, it's been no secret. They've had some issues on special teams the last few years, and you got to keep your good guys. Now, what I'll say is I've always been high on Sherrick McManus. I really do like him as a player, and I think he's a good corner. I mean, he's shown, between training camp last year and the year before, he's shown that he can be a good corner, preseason. So I really think he was miscast. I really don't think. I mean, he's a big guy. I mean, I think he's 6'6'1". I mean, he doesn't belong in the slot. I mean, he really doesn't. He's not a nickel guy. He needs to be on the outside, and he needs to be able to play the ball, and he wasn't a good fit inside. So I honestly think that was part of the issue. Hopefully this year, you're going to have Tracy Porter that'll be back, and we got the Bryce Callahan, and I'm sure they're going to draft somebody or sign somebody else. So ultimately, I think there's going to be more competition there, and I think they'll have more competition in the nickel, which hopefully will push him outside if they ever need that. I really do think he was misused, and I still think he could be a solid corner. Something that somebody threw out the other day that might not be a bad idea is, he reminds me of Corey Graham personally. And Corey Graham obviously was a little bit of a late bloomer. He finally got a shot, and he played really well at corner, and then he moved to safety when he went to Buffalo. And somebody had thrown out the idea that maybe a move to safety as a backup safety would do him so good. I mean, he has good ball skills. He has good coverage skills. I do think he could be a decent a free safety. I don't think he's quite big enough to be a strong safety and withstand that type of contact and that type of role. But, I mean, I think he still has some value on defense. I know most people are writing him off as just a special teams only guy. He has a lot of value there. But I do think in the right role, I do think that he can be a good, at least fill-in guy. I mean, they're not looking for him to start, but at the same time, I mean, if he needs to step in, as we've seen so many injuries over the last few years, I mean, he needs to be a guy that can be able to step in, and I think in the right situation he can. So, yeah, I do think it's big. I mean, he's coming back. I think it was a 2-year, $2.8 million deal, so, for basically $1.5 million a year, you're getting a guy that provides you really good value on special teams and a guy that I think can still be a good backup. So I definitely think it was a good move. It was a smart move for them. They need to improve their special teams, and obviously keeping one of your best special teamers is a good start.
No doubt about it. And switching gears now before we let you go, Aaron, as always, your time is greatly appreciated. Can't let you go without, getting an update on Zach Miller, who it looks like he's going to be getting paid. Obviously, a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy really throughout his NFL career. An injury here, an injury there. This past season, he was able to stay healthy. He was a reliable target for Jay Cutler, and really had a breakout year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he did lead the team in receiving touchdowns. And obviously, he probably had the catch of the year there against the San Diego Chargers to help the Bears win that game. What kind of update is there on Zach Miller? I mean, it looks like there's no way in hell that Martellus Bennett will be back in the Bears uniform next season, whether he's traded, whether he's cut. It does not look like there's any way he'll be returning. Obviously, tight end, that there will be a need there, even if Zach Miller is here. I got to think that's that they're still going to be looking around for another target, another player to fill in there when Martellus is gone. Any update on Zach Miller?
Well, as far as I know, I mean, they're still in the work of re-signing, and that's been one of their big off-season plans all along. They had interest in Dwayne Allen. Obviously, that didn't work out because he got paid in Indianapolis. I was also told that they had some preliminary interest in Ladarius Green. He took one visit to Pittsburgh, and that was the end of that. So, I mean, overall, it was a very weak tight end market. There was no real proven guys out there. Jared Cook's still out there for what that's worth. I don't know if that, I don't think that would really interest the Bears. And then obviously they had Jermaine Gresham in for a visit. I think it was yesterday or the day before. So, I mean, overall, they need to do something, and I think Zach Miller at this point is going to be the best option. He's a guy that knows the offensive system. He's a guy that can still produce if he can keep healthy. I mean, health has been an issue. So, I mean, it's going to be key to get him at the right price, and ultimately I think they will. I think something like what Garrett Selleck got, I think is going to be about what he's in line for. So we'll have to see. I think the guarantee is going to be somewhat low just because of his health issues. But I do expect him back. I know they have been negotiating with him. That is one of their big priorities in terms of re-signing and for the rest of the offseason, realistically. So I do know that they do still have interest in Gresham. I know he wants to go around and see what he can get. I mean, this is a guy that was rumored to be getting $5 or $6 million a year on the open market last year before he had those back issues when obviously he was supposed to go to the Raiders and things kind of fell apart for him a little bit, and he went to Arizona. So, I mean, he's a guy still with some upside. He's only 27 years old. He had a great career at Oklahoma. I mean, I got to watch every year that he was there. He started off really good with Cincinnati. He's a guy that's really hard to bring down. So, I mean, health bearing, I think he could be a good option. But ultimately it's just a very weak class altogether in terms of free agency, and even you look towards the draft. I mean, you're going to have to overdraft on a tight end if you're really wanting to go that route. I don't think the Bears really looking to do that. So, I mean, yeah, they're looking to get younger and they're looking to build long-term success, but at the same time, I mean, there's multiple holes in this roster, and they're going to have to put stopgaps in there. And, tight end's a spot where they can do that. I mean, obviously, Jarrell Freeman, he is about to turn 30. And I look at him as, I wouldn't really call him a long-term player because he already is going to be 30 years old. But at the same time, I mean, I think he can live out the life of that contract and maybe give him an extra year if they need to. So, you get these guys that are going to be solid stopgaps for 2 or 3 years so they can, get other positions taken care of. And I really think that's where they're at with tight end. They may take a chance later on in the draft, but as far as the free agency market, I mean, it's really dried up. I do think they will get Miller re-signed, and I think it will be within the next few days to a week. I mean, there's really no mystery out there. I don't think he really has as much of a market as he thought he was going to have. So I think Pace is just kind of letting him feel it out. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's loyalty on both sides. I mean, Bill was a great guy. I got to talk with him during training camp, very confident. He hung around in 2014 when he got injured, when he was during preseason. I mean, he was there the whole entire year. He was hanging out. He was there when the new staff came in. I mean, he's been a guy that has been loyal to the team. The team is, looking to be loyal to him too. So ultimately, something will get done. It may just be smaller things right now, or they may just kind of have him on the back burner, knowing that they're going to get it done, and him knowing that they're going to get it done until they can get a few more free agents signed and get a little bit more of a plan. But either way, I mean, there's really not much of a worry there. So I do expect him within probably the next week or so to be back under contract and be here probably a few more years.
And he's a guy, I mean, he's a guy that seems like he wants to be here. I mean, you don't hear a bad thing about him coming out the locker room, the coaching staff. I mean, when you got Jay Cutler, complimenting you and obviously targeting you the way Cutler was this past season, says a lot. Zach Miller obviously had a huge career year. And, I totally agree with you, Aaron. I'm certainly not worried about it. It would surprise me if he is not a Chicago Bear next season. But a big start to free agency for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Danny Trevathan, the former Denver Bronco linebacker, headlines the signings. You got Trevathan, Jarrell Freeman, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts, Bobby Massey, formerly of the Arizona Cardinals, and possibly a few more guys, including Akiem Hicks, formerly of the Saints and the New England Patriots. And then, of course, the Bears were able to lock down a few of their own guys in Tracy Porter, Sheriff McManus, Mitch Unrein, and Mark Mariani. Aaron, we always appreciate you taking some time to join the show. Before we let you go, please tell our listeners where we can check out you and your work at.
Yeah, you can just go to scout.com or Bear Report, either one. You can go on there, and I have basically everything there. You can go onto my Twitter account, Aaron Leming NFL. Pretty simple. I post everything on there. I've been taking a little bit of a break from the writing aspect, but I mean, I've always got stuff on Twitter and be popping out some new stuff, especially with the start of free agency. So you can definitely find me on there.
A must follow for sure. Again, bearreport.com. At Aaron Leming NFL. Aaron, always appreciated, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again very soon.
Absolutely, man. It was good talking to you, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
There he goes, Aaron Leming of Bear Report, bearreport.com. Give him a follow on Twitter, at Aaron Leming NFL.